Let me take you all back 7 years ago. In 2018, I was north of Sarasota, and I was with the crew performing a tear-off from shingles to tile. Oh, my mistake, from tiles to shingle. Now, in the afternoon, I was cleaning. I was right here kneeling, picking up debris. Now, the house was about 2 stories high. A worker was right here, carrying tile right there. Now, in a span of 2 seconds, the tile fell roughly about this big, directly above me, right here. Now, in this instance, there's 2 possibilities, each with 50% of probability. Either I move away, or I get hit and die. Now, this is a main proponent of quantum immortality. Now, quantum mechanics tells us that the wave function describes our world. And none other better example than Schrodinger's cat. In this example, in 1935, we hypothetically put a cat inside a box with the device, in this case a hammer, and a vial of poisonous gas. Now after 10 minutes, the vial will break and the cat will leave 2 fates, creating a wavelength in itself, since there's 2 possibilities. Either it dies or it lives. Now we will never know that until we lift up the box, thus collapsing the quantum, collapsing the wavelength. Now, like my scenario, there's only 2 possibilities here. And if we never take off the box, then each possibility remains at 100%. So the cat either dies or lives, which creates a paradox. That leads into MWI, which is multiple world interpretation. And before I dive into MWI, there are some terms I think is worth noting. So, in quantum mechanics, a spin up is a positive, and a spin down is a negative, assuming there are no other variables in any other decision, action. Now, assuming someone didn't show up today, that in itself creates a paradox. The reality they're in, it creates a paradox because of complementary, which is an idea by Niels Bohr, and is a proponent of EPR, which is the Einstein-Potosi-Rosen paradox. Every time we do an action, a split occurs, which correlates to our quantum mortality. If you don't count that the split happens where another branch of quantum realm is where you did come and present. And if you had variables, if you came and present, but there was no time to present, that itself creates another variable, because we always have an option to present or not present, which in itself makes another wavelength. How does this correlate to mortality? Well, in 1997, there was an experiment called quantum suicide. Now, the only way to test that is if, like the Schrodinger cat, I put myself in a box, except with the cat, there's an observer to monitor to see whether or not this is possible. But with suicide, I would be in the box and I would have a gun and I would shoot myself in the temple. Now, if it clicks, that means this is true. I'll just simply go into another realm where it clicked. Now, unfortunately, that is the only experiment any of you can do, which is kill yourself. Now, That is not an ideal thing to do, which is why this is primarily a philosophical idea rather than a scientific one. So next go to real world stuff. Let's say you're driving and a car's coming at you, but suddenly you swerve and you miss the impact. Well, you actually died. So you right now is dead. Well, then only your consciousness jumped to the probability, to the universe most probable, which applies to science. So, it's pretty much the gist, but what's most interesting is the philosophical point of this. Because quantum immortality is in itself a paradox. If it exists, then that means every single action you do, no matter how insignificant, affects you. Because if you make a decision that leads to, let's say you're in a situation where you get tortured. Well, with quantum immortality, if all possible versions of yourself reaches that point, then you'll forever be tortured over and over and over again until ultimately you reach immortality. That doesn't mean you won't feel pain. That means you'll be tortured, say flayed, and you'll forever be flayed. You'll feel pain, pain won't go, and you'll be alone on earth forever and ever until the universe just collapses. There's more I want to say, but that's too crazy to say. So that's about it.